Good day, welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. My name is Cavill, and today we are going to be talking about one of my personal favourite fan theories, the Darth Jar Jar one. It has, for a very long time, been one of my favourite theories, and it's something that I get really passionate and excited talking about. So, today, I'm going to be exploring all of the theory surrounding it, and my own personal take on what that particular variation is. So, what I'll get you to do is sit back, relax, maybe get some snacks and something to drink, and settle in as I explore this. So, without further ado, I give you Darth Jar Jar. In May of 1999, millions of fans sat in the dark, waiting for the return of a legend. But instead of a Sith Lord in a mask, they were introduced to a Gungan in a swamp. Jar Jar Binks didn't just divide the fanbase. He became the universal shorthand for creative failure. For 16 years, the consensus was simple. George Lucas had made a mistake. He had created a cartoon for a movie that needed a villain. I know I personally witnessed the midnight release of The Phantom Menace in '99, and I loved the movie, personally. And I could understand why many fans did not. But in 2015, a user named Lumpawaru posted a theory on Reddit that didn't just suggest that Jar Jar was a spy. It suggested he was the most sophisticated antagonist in cinematic history. Today, we're going deeper. We're exploring the narrative evidence that Jar Jar Binks wasn't just a Sith Lord. Instead, he was the physical vessel for the creator of the Skywalkers, Darth Plagueis the Wise. If you watch The Phantom Menace with the Sith lens, the bad writing starts to look like a masterclass in deception. We see Jar Jar doing things that should be physically impossible for a clumsy outcast. Gungans are athletic, but Jar Jar's 20-foot vertical leap from a standstill in the Naboo swamps exceeds the natural biology of his species. It matches the force jump ability utilized by the Jedi Knights. Look closely at the scenes where Jar Jar is standing behind powerful leaders. His mouth moves in perfect synchronization with their dialogue. In the lore of the mind trick, this is often depicted as the caster projecting words into the victim's mind. Jar Jar's combat during the Battle of Naboo is a one-for-one match of the Drunken Master trope, which can be found in martial arts cinema. Every accident, tripping over a droid, getting a foot stuck in a tank, results in a lethal blow to the enemy. He isn't just lucky, he is a master of kinetic flow, and he uses his environment to mask just how lethal he is. George Lucas famously said, "It's like poetry, it rhymes." To understand the logic of Darth Jar Jar, you have to look at the rhyme from The Empire Strikes Back. Lucas needed a dark mirror for the greatest subversion in the original trilogy. That is to say, Grandmaster Yoda. Yoda was a small, annoying, giggling creature who stole Luke's food and hit R2-D2 with his cane. He is a nuisance until the big reveal that size matters not. In contrast, you have Jar Jar, who is the dark side mirror. He's tall, he's annoying, he's a bumbling creature who causes chaos. The narrative logic demands that he, too, be a mask for something ancient and powerful. But why would a Sith Lord, especially one as brilliant as Darth Plagueis, choose to inhabit a Gungan? For this is where our story truly begins. It starts with a murder on Coruscant and a soul that refused to stay dead. We aren't just looking for a dark Jar Jar. We are looking for the Grand Master of the Sith, a moon who had discovered the secret to eternal life and needed a place to hide while his chosen one, Anakin Skywalker, grew into his power. The clown wasn't the joke, ladies and gentlemen. We were. To understand how this happened, we have to go back to before the swamp. We have to go to the banking world of Moonalis, to the laboratory of Higo Damask, better known to history as Darth Plagueis the Wise. To understand why a Sith Lord would hide inside a Gungan, we first have to understand who that Sith Lord was. He wasn't a warrior in a black cape. He was a banker. His name was Higo Damask II, known in the shadows as Darth Plagueis the Wise. Plagueis existed to the moon species, a tall, gaunt, and famously cold-blooded species. In Star Wars Legends lore, the moons ran the intergalactic banking clan. They didn't conquer planets with Star Destroyers, they conquered them with debt. Plagueis believed that the galaxy wasn't ruled by the Force, but by leverage. For 1,000 years, the Sith had followed the rule of two: one master, one apprentice. But while previous Sith sought to destroy the Jedi through combat, Plagueis sought to destroy the Republic through entropy. He spent decades funding both sides of planetary civil wars, ensuring the Senate became so bogged down in bureaucracy and corruption that it would eventually beg for a dictator. But Plagueis had a secondary goal. He wanted to retire the rule of two. He didn't want an apprentice to eventually kill him. He wanted to live forever. Darth Plagueis, as a moon, had 3 hearts and a highly logical, almost computer-like brain. Plagueis used this biological precision to study the midi-chlorians, the microscopic organisms that link a being to the Force. He didn't just use the Force, he hacked it. He learned how to manipulate those organisms to create life or prevent death. Around 10 years before the events of The Phantom Menace, Plagueis and his apprentice, Sheev Palpatine, performed a ritual that changed the galaxy forever. They attempted to tilt the cosmic balance of the Force towards the dark side. But the Force is a living entity, and it struck back. In response to this darkness, the Force conceived a child in a slave woman on Tatooine, Anakin Skywalker. This boy was a Vergence, a concentrated storm of Force energy. To Plagueis, this wasn't a threat. It was his masterpiece. He had finally found a host body capable of holding his infinite power. The most famous scene in the prequel trilogy is Palpatine telling Anakin the legend of his own master. But listen to the wording. Palpatine talks about Plagueis as if he is the ghost that still haunts him. Palpatine believed he killed his master on the night he was elected Chancellor. He thinks he stabbed the moon in his sleep. He underestimated one thing Plagueis was best at: the exit strategy. On the night of his murder, Plagueis didn't fight back. Why, you might ask? Because his moon body was failing him. He was old. He was fragile. He was a target. Plagueis knew Palpatine's ambition would eventually lead him to betrayal, so he prepared a vessel. He needed somebody who was physically durable, someone who could travel with the Jedi unnoticed, and somebody so socially repulsive that no one would ever look into his eyes and see an ancient Sith Lord staring back. Plagueis' public persona, Higo Damask, had spent years on Naboo. It was he who funded Palpatine's political career there. He knew the planet's geography, both the human cities and the hidden underwater cities of the Gungans. He didn't just find Jar Jar, he selected him. And as life faded from Hugo Damask's moon hearts in a penthouse on Coruscant, a clumsy Gungan in a swamp thousands of light years away suddenly gasped for air. The essence had transferred, and a puppet master had a new skin. There was a problem, though. The Chosen One was only 9 years old. Plagueis couldn't take Anakin yet. The boy's body wasn't ready. And so, the greatest mind in Sith history had to play the part of a fool. He had to wait. He had to make sure the Jedi brought the boy straight to him. Imagine, if you will, the psychic shock of a god falling into the body of a beast. When Higo Damask's spirit surged across the stars, fleeing from his dying moon form, it didn't land in a king or a warrior. It landed in a creature whose very biology was an affront to Sith elegance. But this was no accident. This was a tactical retreat into the most impenetrable fortress in the galaxy: ridicule. One of the most persistent questions in the Darth Jar Jar theory is, why was he so clumsy? If a Sith Lord is inside him, why is he tripping over his own feet? And this is where our narrative takes its first dark turn. Think about the physical reality of the essence transfer. You are a moon. You're 7 foot tall, spindly, with 3 hearts and a brain built for cold mathematical logic. Suddenly, your consciousness is shoved into a Gungan, an amphibious creature with long prehensile ears, a 3-foot-long tongue, and a center of gravity that is constantly shifting due to its spring-loaded legs. The clumsiness that we see in the early scenes of The Phantom Menace isn't just a personality trait. It's a calibration error. Darth Plagueis had to learn how to pilot this rubbery, chaotic body. Every time he tried to exert force influence, the Gungan nervous system recoiled. The boomer he dropped, the things he knocked over in Oto Gunga, these weren't accidents. They were the results of a Sith Lord's massive psychic weight trying to balance itself in a vessel that felt like a marionette made of jelly. This brings us to Jar Jar's backstory. He tells Qui-Gon Jinn that he was banished from Oto Gunga because he was clumsy. But if we look closer, this exile was the smartest move that Plagueis could have made. Why would a Sith Lord want to be banished to a swamp? Exile provided Plagueis with the one thing he needed most: privacy. In the deep, dark marshes of Naboo, away from the prying eyes of Boss Nass and the Gungan guards, Plagueis could practice. He could leap. He could strike. He could calibrate his force sensors to work with the Gungan's unique amphibious physiology. He wasn't wandering around aimlessly. He was in a boot camp of his own making, turning the joke of a body into a lethal weapon. By being in exile, Jar Jar became a ghost. He had no record. He had no responsibilities. Most importantly, he had no one watching him. He was a blank slate in the Force. So, when the Trade Federation invaded, he didn't run away in fear. He simply positioned himself. He knew the Jedi would be sent to Naboo. He knew they would land in the swamps to avoid the blockade. And he knew that the Jedi's greatest weakness was their compassion. To understand why George Lucas would even think of this, we have to look at his inspirations. Lucas was a massive fan of Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, and in that series there is a character that serves as the perfect blueprint for Jar Jar Binks, the Mule. In Foundation, the galaxy is being conquered by a mysterious, unstoppable psychic named the Mule. The heroes spend the entire book looking for this terrifying warlord. Along the way, they pick up a traveling companion, a pathetic, bumbling, spindly-legged clown named Magnifico Giganticus. Magnifico is Jar Jar. He is annoying, he's a coward, and he's played for laughs. But at the end of the story, the reveal is devastating. Magnifico is the Mule. He used his pathetic appearance to bypass the hero's defenses, using his psychic powers to manipulate their emotions while they were busy laughing at him. This is the veil of the Maya, the idea that the world is an illusion. The Sith thrive on this. If you are a terrifying man in a black mask, like Vader, people flee. But if you are a fool who can't walk straight, people lower their shields. Plagueis as Jar Jar is the ultimate expression of this Sith philosophy. He wasn't just hiding, he was mocking the Jedi's ability to perceive the truth. So, let's re-examine that moment Qui-Gon Jinn saves Jar Jar from a Trade Federation transport. If you watch the scene carefully, Jar Jar isn't running in circles. He's running towards the Jedi. He ignores dozens of safe places to hide and runs directly into the path of a Jedi Master. Look at Jar Jar's reaction. He immediately clings to Qui-Gon. He uses the life debt, an ancient, unbreakable social bond, to ensure that the Jedi can never leave him behind. This wasn't a rescue. It was a capture. Plagueis had caught his first Jedi. From that moment on, the Sith Lord would be standing inches away from the Jedi Council's most powerful masters, and they wouldn't feel a thing. Why? Because their Force senses were tuned to look for darkness and power. They weren't looking for a clumsy Gungan who was too busy screaming to be a threat. The most powerful Sith in history had just walked through the front door of the Jedi Order, and he did it while holding a Jedi's hand. There is a specific trope being used here, the hidden intellectual. Throughout the journey to Oto Gunga and then to Tatooine, Jar Jar is constantly, accidentally sabotaging things. He gets them kicked out of the Gungan city. He forces them to take a bongo through the planet's core, and he accidentally alerts the droids. But if you look at the outcomes, every accident leads the Jedi closer to Anakin Skywalker. Plagueis is the director of the film, and Jar Jar is his avatar on set. He's nudging the pieces into place. He isn't just a passenger. He is the navigator of the entire Skywalker destiny. Let's take a minute, though, and talk about the physical transformation. In the Legends novel, Darth Plagueis, it is mentioned that the Sith Lord had a fascination with how different species process the Force. Gungans have a unique, decentralized nervous system and highly developed sensory organs. By inhabiting Jar Jar, Plagueis gained a sensory suite that a moon could only dream of. He could hear vibrations in the Force that Jedi Masters missed. He could smell the fear of his enemies. He turned the Gungans' supposed weaknesses, their long ears and their bulging eyes, into high-fidelity Sith sensors. He was no longer a banker in a tower. He was a predator in the tall grass. But the greatest test was yet to come. Plagueis had found the Jedi. He had found his new body. Now, he had to find his son. He had to travel to a dust ball of a planet called Tatooine, where a 9-year-old boy was waiting with a destiny that would burn the galaxy to ash. As the Jedi ship, as the Naboo royal cruiser landed in the desert, the clown stepped out onto the sand, his eyes yellowing for a split second in the glare of the twin suns. The Master had arrived. If the swamp was a laboratory for calibration, Coruscant was a battlefield. We often think of the Sith infiltration of the Republic as a political move by Palpatine. But if the Darth Jar Jar theory holds, infiltration was far more literal and far more insulting to the Jedi Order. Plagueis didn't just want to destroy the Jedi. He wanted to sit in their halls and watch them fail to see the monster standing 3 feet away. He didn't just walk into the heart of the Republic. He was carried there by the Jedi himself. He was the ultimate Trojan horse. But before the group reaches Coruscant, they stop on Tatooine. This is the most crucial moment in the Plagueis Jar Jar entity. It's the first time he lays his eyes on Anakin Skywalker, the vergence that he and Palpatine sparked into existence 10 years prior. Think back to the Phantom Menace. Notice how Jar Jar's behavior is around Anakin. He doesn't act like an adult. He acts like a playmate. He embeds himself into the boy's life immediately. While Qui-Gon is focused on the boy's potential, Jar Jar is testing the boy's reflexes. There is a famous and arguably controversial scene where Jar Jar uses his prehensile tongue to snatch a piece of fruit from the bowl. Most see it as a lowbrow comedic gag. But look at it through the eyes of a Sith Master. He's testing kinetic speed, accuracy, and the reactions of those around him. When Qui-Gon catches his tongue, it's a moment of Sith on Jedi testing. Plagueis isn't embarrassed. He's taking notes. When the group finally arrives on Coruscant, something fascinating happens. Jar Jar Binks, a clumsy Gungan, is granted access to the most sensitive locations in the galaxy. He's in the Queen's private chambers. He's on Senate landing bays. He even walks the halls of the Jedi Temple. Why? because of a philosophical concept called the hierarchy of perception. In highly stratified society, like the Republic, people ignore those they deem beneath them. The Jedi, for all their talk of equality, are an elite, aristocratic priesthood. To them, a Gungan is a primitive. They don't hide their secrets from Jar Jar for the same reason you don't hide your secrets from your golden retriever. You assume he doesn't have the capacity to understand them. This is where it gets clever, because Plagueis used this arrogance as a cloak. He stood in the room while the Jedi Council discussed their deepest fears. He watched Yoda's face as the Grand Master sensed the shroud of the dark side. Plagueis wasn't just hiding in the shroud. He was the shroud. He was the Phantom Menace. Imagine the internal monologue of Darth Plagueis as he enters the Jedi Temple. This is the place he has spent a lifetime plotting to destroy. And he enters it not as a conqueror, but as a clown who keeps getting his hand stuck in things. There is another trope being explored here, the fool in the throne room. And in medieval drama, the jester is the only one who can tell the king the truth, because the king doesn't take him seriously. Jar Jar is the dark inversion of this. He is the only one who knows the lie, and he tells it every time he speaks in that exaggerated, pathetic Gungan dialect. We are often told that the dark side clouds everything, which is why the Jedi couldn't sense Palpatine. But Palpatine was a politician. He was always under scrutiny. Jar Jar, however, was a constant source of chaotic energy. If the Jedi felt a ripple of darkness or unease near Jar Jar, they would simply attribute it to his clumsy or irritating nature. He was a psychic heatsink, absorbing and redirecting any suspicion towards his own annoying personality. By the end of The Phantom Menace, Jar Jar is no longer in exile. He is a Bombad general. He helped save Naboo. This is the first major step in his political ascent. Plagueis has successfully moved his vessel from the Naboo swamp to the Senate. As the movie ends, we see a celebration. The Jedi are there. The Queen is there. And Palpatine, the new Chancellor, is there. But look at the final frames. Jar Jar is right there, standing next to the most powerful people in the galaxy. The Trojan horse is now parked inside the city gates. The Jedi think the war is over because Darth Maul is dead. They think the Sith have been defeated. They have no idea the apprentice is now the Chancellor. And the Master is the one laughing at them from the back of the parade. There is a profound irony in Jar Jar's speech patterns. To the ears of the Republic, he sounds simple. But if you translate the complexity of his actions, his ability to navigate high-stakes diplomacy between the Gungans and the Naboo, his incredible survival in a planetary war, and his eventual rise to the Senator, you see an incredible depth of complexity. Plagueis was a moon, a creature of high finance and intricate banking codes. He loved complexity hidden by simplicity. Jar Jar's speech was his ultimate encryption code. It kept the Jedi from ever engaging him in real conversation. They spoke at him, never to him. And in doing so, they missed the chance to see the god hiding in the Gungan. 10 years pass. The boy grows. the Republic rots. And as we move into Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, the mask begins to slip. The Fool is about to become a senator, and he is about to perform the single most destructive act in the history of galactic democracy. It's time to talk about the emergency powers, and the moment the clown finally takes his bow. In the theatrical cut of Attack of the Clones, a new villain emerges from the shadows, Count Dooku. A former Jedi, an aristocrat, a man of gravitas. But narratively, Dooku has always felt like a late-stage replacement. He appears an hour into the second act with a backstory we never saw. In our version, though, the version where George Lucas didn't blink, Count Dooku does not exist. The leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, the man the Jedi believe is a political idealist, is none other than the representative from Naboo. This is the moment where the Fool becomes the architect. This is the era of Darth Tyrannus. To understand why this is a superior narrative, we have to look at the philosophy of the Sith. They don't just take over. They utilize the Hegelian dialectic, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The thesis: Palpatine, the Republic, the order that has become stagnant. The antithesis: the Confederacy, the Separatists, and the chaos that threatens the order. All to achieve the synthesis, the Galactic Empire. If Palpatine is the thesis, he cannot also be the antithesis. He needs a partner. In the films, he uses Dooku. But in the Darth Jar Jar reality, the partner is already in the room. By having Jar Jar lead the Separatists from the shadows, the Sith control both ends of the galaxy's heartbeat. They are the arsonist and the fire department. We have to talk about the most infamous scene in the prequels. Jar Jar Binks standing before the Galactic Senate and proposing Chancellor Palpatine be given emergency powers. In the theatrical version, this is framed as Jar Jar being a useful idiot, a bumbling fool who is tricked into destroying democracy. But look at the logic. Why was Jar Jar even there? Because Padme Amidala, the one person who could have stopped the vote, had to go into hiding. And who was the one that encouraged her to leave? Who was the one who stayed behind to protect her interests? Jar Jar. Think about the irony. The clown didn't just stumble into the destruction of the Republic. He engineered it. While the Jedi were off chasing bounty hunters on Kamino, the Master, Darth Plagueis, was handing his apprentice the keys to the kingdom. It wasn't an accident. It was the closing of a trap. By removing Count Dooku and replacing him with Jar Jar, Lord Tyrannus, the story gains a terrifying focus. In this version, the leader of the Separatists is a mysterious, hooded figure who only communicates via hologram. The Separatist Council, the banking clan, the Techno Union, the Trade Federation, they don't know who he is. They simply know him as Lord Tyrannus. And here is where the lore gets deeper, and in my opinion, begins to connect all the dots. The intergalactic banking clan is run by moons. Remember, Darth Plagueis was a moon. And when the Separatist leaders meet on Geonosis, they aren't meeting a human count. They are meeting the spiritual essence of their greatest financial forefather. They aren't following a rebel. They are following the banker of the Sith. Now let's picture the climax on Geonosis. Obi-Wan Kenobi is captured. He's hanging in a containment field, and a figure walks out of the shadows to speak with him. In the movie, it's Christopher Lee. But imagine the figure walking towards Obi-Wan is the Gungan. Obi-Wan laughs. He thinks it's a joke. He asks Jar Jar why he's doing that and why he's dressed in Sith robes. And that's when the voice happens. And this is my favorite part of this particular theory. Jar Jar stops fidgeting. His posture straightens. His ears stop flopping and hang with the weight of a heavy shroud. And when he speaks, the high-pitched Messa dialect is gone. Instead, out of the Gungan's mouth comes the cold, aristocratic, and terrifying baritone of Christopher Lee. This is the sonic reveal. It utilizes the uncanny valley. The audience sees a cartoon, but they hear a monster. This is the moment the Drunken Master mask is shattered forever. My theory is that Christopher Lee was always destined to be attached to Episode 2. And it was at this moment where Ahmed Best's excellent performance as Jar Jar would gradually fade as Christopher Lee's voice emitted that deep, sonorous baritone as Jar Jar was revealed as a Sith Lord, tying everything together. Unfortunately, due to the backlash after The Phantom Menace, we never got to see that reveal, which leads me to the next part. The film, Episode 2, concludes with a duel between Yoda and the Sith Lord. In our version, the theatrical version, it's merely Yoda versus Count Dooku. Instead, in this different universe, it isn't just a lightsaber fight. It's a philosophical execution. Yoda is forced to fight the creature he dismissed as a nuisance. Every time Yoda swings, Jar Jar, or Lord Tyrannus, moves with a fluidity that mocks the Jedi Grand Master. It's not clumsy anymore. It's perfect. Imagine Jar Jar Binks, a creature who couldn't walk through a market without breaking a jar, suddenly catching Yoda. Imagine the look on Yoda's face when he realizes the dark side didn't just cloud their vision, it watched them sleep. The Sith didn't win because they were stronger. They won because they were funnier. They used the Jedi's own sense of dignity against them. Which leads me to the theatrics. Imagine you've got two mirrors. You have the small green Yoda, who's agile and fast. And then you've got the narrative opposite, a tall, orange Gungan with his long red lightsaber. You've got the fight of preciseness and speed versus the Zhu Quan, the drunken master style of Darth Jar Jar's fighting. You've got order versus chaos, green versus red. You have a narrative parallel that would have equaled the Vader reveal from Episode 5. And in that, the movies would have rhymed. Which takes us to, why Tyrannus? In Roman history, a tyrant was someone who took power by force, often masquerading as a man of the people. Plagueis, as Jar Jar, is the ultimate tyrant. He used the people's voice, the bumbling common Gungan, to seize the ultimate power. By the end of Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars have begun. Millions are dying, and the man responsible is the same man that the Jedi are currently tasked with protecting in the Senate. The Sith Master has achieved the impossible. He is both the leader of the enemy and a protected citizen of the Republic. He is everywhere, and because he looks like a joke, he is nowhere. The trap is set. The war is raging. Anakin Skywalker is no longer a boy. He is a hero, a general, and a husband, but he is also a soul in torment. As we move into the final act of this tragedy, we see the true cruelty of the Plagueis plan. Because to truly break Anakin, to turn him into the ironclad monster known as Vader, the Sith Master has one final lesson to teach. It involves a lightsaber, a choice, and the death of the only friend Anakin ever truly had. We finally reached the endgame, Revenge of the Sith, my personal favourite Star Wars film. In the official canon, this is the story of Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side. But in the shadow script of the Darth Jar Jar theory, this is the story of a double betrayal. It is the moment where the apprentice, Sheev Palpatine, finally outmaneuvers his master, Darth Plagueis. He does it by forcing the Chosen One to commit the most psychologically devastating murder in the history of the Jedi. The film opens with a massive space battle over Coruscant. The Chancellor has been kidnapped by the Separatist leader, Lord Tyrannus, and they are aboard a flagship called the Invisible Hand. In our narrative, the name of the ship is a cruel joke. It refers to the invisible hand of the market, Plagueis' moon banking background, and the literal invisible hand that has been guiding Anakin's life since he was 9 years old. Anakin and Obi-Wan crash land onto the ship to rescue the Chancellor. They enter the observation deck, and there, sitting in the high-back chair, is the Gungan. He isn't bumbling, he isn't clumsy, he's waiting. The duel begins. In the theatrical cut, Dooku fights with the elegance of a fencer. But imagine the Gungan Sith Lord. His style would be so utterly alien, utilizing his amphibious flexibility to strike from angles no human could reach. He doesn't just use a lightsaber, he uses the Force to manipulate the very gravity of the room. But something is different. Tyrannus isn't fighting to win, he's fighting to test. Plagueis is still looking for his final vessel. He has pushed Anakin to the brink. He's waiting for that spark of pure, murderous rage that will finally allow him to discard the Gungan body and inhabit the ultimate vessel of the Chosen One. This is the pivot point of the entire saga. In the original movie, Palpatine tells Anakin to kill Dooku, a man Anakin has known for maybe, 3 years as an enemy. Anakin hesitates, but not for long. Now imagine this scene with Jar Jar. Anakin has the blades at the throat of the creature who was his first friend. The creature who stayed with his mother on Tatooine. The creature who represented the simple joy of his childhood. Palpatine leans forward, his voice a honeyed poison. Do it. By forcing Anakin to kill Jar Jar, Palpatine isn't just making him a Sith Lord. He's making him kill his own innocence. He is forcing Anakin to destroy the last link he has to the boy who dreamed of being a pilot. Because if Anakin can kill Jar Jar, he can kill anyone. He can kill the younglings, and he can even kill Padme. Jar Jar Binks is the moral anchor of Anakin Skywalker, and Palpatine needs that anchor cut. But you might be thinking, why does Jar Jar, the brilliant Darth Plagueis, let this happen? This is the Grand Gambler's one fatal mistake. Plagueis believed that, at the moment of his death, he would simply perform an essence transfer into Anakin, much as he did when Sheev killed him and he inhabited Jar Jar. He thought he was baiting a trap. But Palpatine, the ultimate student in treachery, had prepared for this moment. As Anakin swings the blades, Palpatine isn't just watching. he's using the dark side of the Force. He's using his immense power to create a psychic cage around the dying Gungan. He prevents the soul of Plagueis from leaping. As the Gungan's head falls, Darth Plagueis the Wise realizes that his apprentice has finally surpassed him. He didn't just kill his master, he made the Chosen One do the dirty work, ensuring that Plagueis' soul was extinguished, while Anakin's soul was permanently scarred. In classical literature, the death of the fool often signals the end of the comedy and the beginning of pure tragedy. Think of King Lear's fool, who disappears halfway through the play as the world descends into madness. Jar Jar's death at the start of Episode 3 would serve the same function. Once the clown is dead, there is no more humour in the galaxy. There is only the iron, the fire, and the screams of the Jedi Temple. As Anakin stands over the body of his friend, and for a moment the yellow eyes of the Sith flash in his own, he has committed the unforgivable act. The puppet master is gone, but the puppet is now fully under Palpatine's control. But did Plagueis truly die? In Legends lore, a Sith Lord's death isn't always a clean break. The death of a Gungan vessel while inhabited by a Sith Lord would leave a Force ghost of a different kind. Some theorists suggest that the clumsiness and fear that once defined Jar Jar's public persona were actually a separate consciousness. The original Gungan soul, suppressed for years by the Sith. When Anakin killed him, he didn't just kill a Sith, he killed a victim. And this is the tragedy of Jar Jar Binks. He was a simple creature who was hijacked by a cosmic entity, forced to dismantle the Republic, and then executed by the boy he loved as a brother. The most hated character in Star Wars isn't a villain. He's the most tragic victim of the Sith's long game. In the aftermath, Palpatine insists on a quick burial. There is no mourning for the representative. In the novelization, it's mentioned that Naboo's history effectively erases Jar Jar. This is the final insult. Plagueis wanted to live forever, but instead he was buried in the unmarked grave of history, remembered only as a bumbling idiot who helped a tyrant. But as we will see in our finale, the Sith have a way of coming back, and sometimes the best place to hide a god is in a block of ice, or a slab of carbonite. The Republic has fallen, the Empire has risen, the Gungan is a memory. But the theory doesn't end with a head on a floor, because in the deep vaults of the Imperial Palace, there is a secret that Vader isn't allowed to see. As an aside, we do have to recall that scene at the opera, where Palpatine gives Anakin the speech about Darth Plagueis, about how he was the person who could create life, but not his own. In this version of the narrative, this is also a final eulogy for a Sith Lord that had finally been killed. It has a double meaning in this sort of situation. We have followed the trail from the Naboo swamps to the heights of the Senate, and finally to the bloody floor of the Invisible Hand. But in the world of the Sith, death is often just a change in management. There is a persistent rumour in the deep lore community, often called the Lucas Clause, which suggests that George Lucas had a specific mandate for the character of Jar Jar Binks. He could never truly be destroyed. He had to be sidelined. And if we follow our Darth Jar Jar path, the reason for this becomes chillingly clear. The Master wasn't executed. He was archived. In the aftermath of Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine is the Emperor. He has his new toy, Darth Vader. But Palpatine is a creature of ultimate preparation. He knows that Vader is broken, and he knows that he himself is not truly immortal yet. Deep beneath the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, in the ruins of an old Jedi temple, lies a restricted vault. Inside is a slab of carbonite. This isn't a trophy like Han Solo. This is a Sith sarcophagus. Inside is the body of a Gungan, but the force resonance coming from that slab is so dark it makes the air taste like ozone. Palpatine kept his master in a state of perfect stasis. Why? Because Plagueis' secret to life extension was still incomplete. Palpatine kept the hardware, Jar Jar's body, and the software, the fragment of Plagueis' mind, locked away. A biological hard drive of the dark side to be accessed when the time was right. This is one of the oldest tropes in mythology, the sealed evil. From the Titans of Tartarus to the Lich in the basement. The story requires a greater threat to be looming just out of sight. By keeping Jar Jar alive in carbonite, the stakes of the original trilogy change. Every time Luke Skywalker faces Vader, he isn't just fighting his father. He's fighting for a galaxy that has a ticking time bomb hidden at its core. The Emperor isn't just a tyrant. He's a jailer. He's the only thing keeping the true Sith Master from waking up. Now let's examine the sequel trilogy through this lens. When we all saw Supreme Leader Snoke for the first time, fans immediately pointed out his physical appearance. Gaunt, tall, pale. He looked like a moon. He looked like the unmasked version of Darth Plagueis. Imagine a version of The Force Awakens where the new villain isn't some random entity from the unknown regions. Imagine Kylo Ren traveling to a ruined Coruscant, entering the deep vaults and melting the carbonite. Out steps a creature with a Gungan's face, but with the voice of an ancient god. The uncanny valley returns. The audience feels that primal phantom menace, but it's immediately replaced by the shivering terror as this joke character begins to dismantle new heroes with a flick of his wrist. This would have been the ultimate narrative payoff. It would have unified all 9 films. The tragedy of the prequels, the struggles of the original trilogy, and the reckoning of the sequels would all revolve around the same phantom, a Gungan who was more than he seemed. Why are we still talking about it over 11 years later? Why does this theory have more staying power than almost any other fan theory in history? It's because of the philosophy of the mask. We all feel, on some level, the world is being run by people who are playing a part. We see politicians, billionaires, and leaders acting clumsy or relatable to hide their true intentions. Jar Jar Binks is the ultimate avatar for that fear. He is the clown who accidentally starts a war. In Sith philosophy, there is no such thing as an accident. There is only the will. If Jar Jar did it, he meant to do it. To accept that Jar Jar was a bumbling idiot is to accept that the universe is chaotic and meaningless. But to see him as a Sith Lord, a Sith Master, is to believe that there is a grand plan. Paradoxically, the idea of a Sith Gungan is more comforting than the idea of a universe governed by pure, stupid luck. Qui-Gon said it best at the very beginning. There is always a bigger fish. In The Phantom Menace, the bigger fish was a sea monster. In the prequels, it was Palpatine. But in the grand architecture of the Force, the biggest fish was the one standing right behind the Jedi the whole time, making them laugh. Darth Jar Jar, or Darth Plagueis the Wise, represents the ultimate victory of the dark side. The ability to be hated, ridiculed, and dismissed, and to use that dismissal to conquer the universe. So, I'll leave you with this thought. The next time you sit down to watch episode 1, don't look at the lightsabers. Don't look at the pod racing. Look at the eyes of the Gungan. Because while the Jedi are looking at the horizon, the Sith is definitely looking at yours. So, that's it. This was a topic I've been wanting to discuss for a very long time. The idea that Darth Jar Jar is the unifying narrative force that connects the series. It touches me deeply because I think that it was a narrative thread that we all missed out on due to the understandably irate nature of fans back in 1999 when the movie first came out. I always love to rewatch episode 1 with the idea that Jar Jar is a Sith Lord because it adds an extra sense of nearly Shakespearean weight to the tragedy of the prequels. And I also feel like we all missed out on the big reveal that Jar Jar was a Sith Lord in episode 2. And most importantly, we missed out on the Yoda versus Jar Jar fight, which would have been incredible. Thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening. Next time, I'm going to be exploring the Wizarding World with a very interesting fan theory of my own devising. I will posit that Severus Snape is the greatest wizard of the entire series. And I know that's a large claim to make, but I do have quite a lot of evidence, and it's an interesting topic to discuss. So, I want to thank you all again for coming to the Dragon's Lair. Thank you so much for attending the podcast, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.